Okay, let's get started. My name is Olivier Laurent. I'm a photo editor on the foreign desk at the Washington Post. I will be moderating this discussion with Salwan Georges, staff photographer at the Washington Post, who just came back from a trip in Iraq, and Louisa Loveluck, who is our Baghdad bureau chief for the Washington Post and has been a journalist in the region for the past 12 years, something like this, I believe. Louisa.
Yes.
Yeah.
12 sounds more authoritative.
So the discussion today is going to be centered around one photo project that Salwan did in Iraq, a personal story. But we will also be using this work to talk a little bit more about the 20th anniversary of the US invasion in Iraq and the legacy of that intervention. So this kind of discussion, I like them to be fluid. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask them in the chat. I will be communicating them to our panelists, Salwan and Louisa, anytime, don't hesitate. So I'll just get started with Salwan. If you could tell us a little bit first about your own personal story, how you became a photographer, staff photographer at the Washington Post.
Yeah, hi everyone, welcome. After leaving Iraq at a young age, I wanted to tell my family story, as well as many of the immigrant and refugees who left Iraq, left Syria, left many countries that's facing a lot of war and violence. And I started this project after kind of like long-term project, as well as the recent story about the sea, as well as getting into photojournalism after a lot of my family members were getting killed or forced to leave Iraq because of after the US invasion, after ISIS violence, and when uncle.
But back up a little bit, like you hint at the fact that so you're Iraqi.
Yeah, I'm Iraqi.
So,
yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how did an Iraqi become a staff photographer at the Washington Post? Like how did you leave Iraq and got to the US in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, my family, like many others, had to flee Iraq after the years of sanctions by the US, where we couldn't even simply have fresh milk. We had to use powder milk, and barely any electricity. We would have like maybe 3 to 2 hours of electricity a day. It wasn't a livable country, facing a lot of problems. So we fled to Syria and then took refugee there. And then after years, 5 years, we made it to Detroit. And that's where I started my career and kind of love for photography and telling family stories. Then later, made it to the Washington Post in 2017. I may be the first Iraqi to join a newspaper as a staff, which is an honor for my people, as well as help me tell my people's story in a better way than since the invasion and the years before. So going back was like an honor for me, and I can't wait to share more during this discussion about what I saw there.
Okay, so you mentioned briefly this personal project. Before we get to the chapter about Iraq and this trip that you took to Iraq, tell us a little bit about the details of that personal project. You hinted at the fact of the reason why you wanted to do it, but how did you do it, and what were you showing in that personal project?
So the personal project started years and years ago. It started back when the first iPhone came out, and I wanted to continue shooting with my phone because I wanted to be present with my family. As you know, we live in a very digital world, and everyone is on their phone, and I didn't want it to have my camera around me. I wanted to have my phone to be more natural around relatives. And after losing members due to the war and violence, I decided documenting my family, documenting things I see every day. And then since then to this point, I went back to Iraq, and I wanted to tell the same story, keep the same vision I have for this, hopefully, book in the future. And And when I got to Iraq, it all hit me like finally felt it's a place I belong.
Okay, so I'm going to show some of the photos that you took on that project. They'll be flowing as we continue to discuss. But I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the first impression that you have when you arrived in Iraq. Like, just to confirm to the people listening to us, that was your first trip back to Iraq in how many years?
So I left in 1998, and it's been almost like 24 years, and I have not been back to my country. The country I know was through books, through stories, through family, through shows on YouTube sometimes, as we are overseas. I when I got there, it was a huge relief. I was looking for an opportunity to kind of be able to see my country again, to be able to have those memories that I didn't have an opportunity to live, and I've forgotten them because I left when I was 8. So going back, seeing my old home, my old school, a lot of the neighborhoods where I grew up, it was really an amazing feeling to be able to kind of finally have that kind of closure, to be able to reconnect with my roots.
How was the atmosphere in Iraq itself, like in 2023, after everything that happened? What do you like? What was your impression of the mood there?
I think from watching afar and then seeing it in my firsthand, the country is definitely not what I remember. It's not the same. I think the violence that was unleashed after the U.S. invasion, as well as the ISIS and years of different kind of conflicts, religious war, of course, it has really reshaped and changed the country to a way that's I don't recognize it that much, the places, because it has almost double in population. Life is harder on Iraqis right now. Maybe back in the day, there were some like electricity or something. Now there's electricity, but through generators, and those generators are polluting the air to an extent that my colleague Louisa and we had to use an inhaler to be able to breathe there if you're not used to there. So I can only imagine what a kid growing up right now in Iraq would feel to be able to go to school, to be think this is normal, to be in this kind of polluted environment. And unfortunately, not much is being done to help these people. The only thing that I felt when I was there, it was the love of the Iraqis. That thing never changed. The people around me, with me, that made me feel like at home. It made me feel like no matter the distraction, no matter how much they're trying to ruin my country, my people still made me feel like I belong there.